हम आगे बात करते हैं इंस्क्रिप्शन एंड रीजनल आइडेंटिटी दैट इज काकटिया. देखो, द मोस्ट नोटेबल फीचर ऑफ द एज ऑफ इंस्क्रिप्शन इज ऑफ कोर्स द impulse to document religious gift in the permanent form. For the greater majority of stone inscription that are recalls of substantial religious endowment. ठीक है, जो मोस्ट नोटेबल फीचर है इंस्क्रिप्शन का वो है इम्पल्स, कि हम लोग रिलीजियस गिफ्ट्स को रिकॉर्ड कर सकें इन अ परमानेंट फॉर्म for the great majority of the stone inscription according to me. But this practice is in turn an index for a complex configuration of socio-economic process and cultural meanings. The rising popularity of the religious patronage of God and Brahmins is testimony to the spread of pan-Indic culture that value the expression of piety in such forms, because stone inscription from medieval South India typically record religious donation. A history constructed from their perspective assigns greatest weight to the documented activities of real individual rather than to the normative details that are prevalent in the contemporary literature. Epigraphic texts describe the kinds of property given away and also provide other useful details: the date of the gift, donor का नाम, उसका family background, personal accomplishment and praise of the monarch. As regional societies mature and become more confident in the early centuries of the second millennium, regional language took over many of the roles previously performed by Sanskrit. जो regional language है वो काफ़ी important role लेते हैं that is previously performed by Sanskrit. This displacement occur not only through the composition of literary texts but also in the expanded use of regional language. So ये जो displacement है, it does not take place just, this displacement occur not only through the composition of literary texts but also in the expanded use of regional language for inscriptional purposes. As Solok notes perceptively, the regional language of the Deccan first appear in inscription centuries before any surviving literary text. Telugu, for instance, date back as far as the 6th century in inscription, whereas the earliest literary texts belong to the mid-11th century. But regional languages were typically used on to, document the details of religious endowment, while the poetic or non-business portions of early medieval inscription, they were composed entirely in Sanskrit. There is no question that linguistic identities were operative in medieval peninsular India. However, no matter how restricted in the social circulation, at least at the level of elite cultural practice, there was a clear consciousness of affiliation with one regional language rather than another, and even a certain degree of pride. Of all the regional languages, Telugu is the most excellent. So the Vijayanagar king Krishnadeva Raya was supposedly told by the god, who calls himself the Telugu king and refers to the Krishnadeva Raya as the Kannada king, by P.B. Wagner. Cynthia tabloid suggests that the conception of regional identity in Andhra Pradesh that merged linguistic and political affiliation, they are articulated during the area of Kakatiyas. Okay, that is 1175 to 325 CE, when the territorial boundaries of the state was largely congruent with the Telugu-speaking area, and they continue to persist even after the demise of Kakatiya. They continue to persist. Okay. Now, Andhra's age of inscription began slightly later than the neighboring regions of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. जो आंध्रा का रीजन है inscription ka, they begin slightly. It begins slightly later than in the neighboring regions of Tamil Nadu. वो slightly begin करता है in the neighboring regions of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Okay. For the rise in the number of Andhra inscription, it does not begin until midway through the 11th century. High rates of inscriptional productions were reached by the early 12th century in Andhra, and they were maintained with some fluctuation until the 17th century. The 2nd century yielding the largest quantity of inscriptions are the 13 to 16. Coincidentally, also the era where strong polities existed in Andhra. The Kakatiya in the case of former Vijayanagar during the later. Cynthia Tabloid, in her work Pre-Colonial India in Practice, subdivides the age of inscription into 4 smaller sub-periods, corresponding roughly to the changes in Andhra political situation. The one comprising the years from 1000 through 1174. In other words, from the commencement of the age of inscription until the age of Kakatiya, hegemony. So the time span where the Kakatiya dynasty rose to paramount status. ठीक है, जो Kakatiya the time span when the Kakatiya dynasty rose to paramount status with Andhra constitute the second period from 1175 through 1324. Now, the third period spans the year 1325 to 1499. And the fourth period encompasses the remainder of the age of inscription, that is from 1500 through 1649, when the Vijayanagar was mostly closed. Okay, So when the Vijayanagar was most closely involved in Andhra affairs, when we look at the Telugu category, or rather total number of all the date inscriptions from the Andhra, the second and fourth period stand out as a time of maximum epigraphic production. Analyzing the geographical distribution of inscription anyway, Talbot states that there was a gradual movement of inscriptional activity from the core region of the coastal Andhra in period 1 to the northern interior in period 2 and subsequently to the southern interior in period 3 and 4. During the age of inscription, different sub-regions of Andhra, basically different sub-regions of Andhra took turn as a locus of inscriptional production. Talbot points out that the geographical spread of inscription was influenced by a shift in the location to the center of the political power, which reinforces the connection between political activity and epigraphic production that we noted in relation to the chronological distribution of inscription. Prior to 100 CE, Telugu inscription had been issued in some parts of inland Andhra, notably in Kudapa and Chittoor district. But the bulk of Telugu epigraphic activity was centered in coastal Andhra. So various large portions of upland Andhra were part of the Kannada or Tamil epigraphic spheres. Between 1000 and 1174, Telugu and Sanskrit inscription in Telugu, like Sanskrit, were quite restricted in scope. Appearing primarily in the central core of Andhra and northeastern district, the Telugu area virtually doubled in period 2. Of which the southern Andhra and considerably more of the Telangana was observed in the Telugu inscription, where by the end of the Kakatiya era, approximately 3/4 of the modern state were participating in a culture of religious endowment and epigraphic documentation in Telugu language. The southerly trend of inscription production continues in period 3. Telangana is somewhat more active in period 4 when the greatest southern and western extent of Telugu record can be observed. In the last era, Telugu inscriptions are also found beyond the modern state boundaries in the western and southern direction. The greater range of Telugu language area partly results from the displacement of other epigraphic language. जो greater range है तेलुगु language की, वो partly result करती है displacement दूसरी epigraphic language का. Not until the Kakatiya period does Telugu become the ascendant epigraphic language in Andhra, primary at the expense of Kannada. Ramarao states that until 12th century Telugu and Kannada shared the same script. Ramarao जो है वो स्टेट करता है कि until 12th century Telugu and Kannada वो सेम स्क्रिप्ट जो है शेयर करते हैं. One of the primary factors behind the sharp increase in Telugu use in Telangana was a change in political situation. ठीक है, एक जो प्राइम मैं बोलूँगी फैक्टर्स हैं वो पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन में चेंज बोलूँगी. काकटिया डायनेस्टी epigraphic practices exemplify this rapid transition caused by a shift in the balance of power. Kakatiya first issued inscription in Kannada that were closely modeled to those of the imperial overlords. ठीक है, the Chalukyas of Kalyani. But once the Kakatiya dynasty terminated and its elegance to the Kalyani Chalukyas, beginning with the Kakatiya's Rudradeva reign, the language of the inscription changed. The speed and thoroughness with which Telugu was adopted suggests that Telugu was already the spoken language of eastern and central Telangana. ठीक है, जो तेलुगु थी, it was already the spoken language of eastern and central Telangana. The Kakatiya base. Hence, in shifting the elegance from Kannada to Telugu, the Kakatiya rulers were both expressing their political independence and their own distinct. ठीक है, they were both expressing their political independence and their own distinct identity as members of the Telugu literary community. M. Somskara Sharma believes that a consciousness of unity based on the use of Telugu began to grow stronger in the 12th century. Henceforth, the label Andhra to designate the entire territory inhabited by Telugu speakers appear more frequently in literary sources. Examples can be found in writings of Tikana, who refers to Andhra populace, and Vidyanatha, who called the last Kakatiya king Pratap Rudra the lord of the Andhra realm. The two words, Telugu and Andhra, become virtually congruent and so called be used interchangeably. As in a mid-14th century inscription that equates the Andhra country with the Telugu country, the language, physical territory and the culture are all conflated into one. Okay, Telangana was now emphasized within the Andhra region as is clear in Kakatiya period inscription from the Warangal that basically praise it into the best city within all of the Andhra up to the shores of the ocean. By the time Kakatiya Pratap Rudra is called the Lord of Andhra in the early 14th century, the Andhra region was taught to include basically the large the Andhra region was basically taught to include the include the large expanses that is lying to the west of the Sri Sailam and was therefore a much larger area than it has been in period 1. In nutshell, for Andhra, the most important era in establishing the linguistic and ultimately cultural unity of the region was the Kakatiya era. The transformation of Telangana from an early in area of most Kannada inscription to one that was predominantly Telugu in character during the Kakatiya period meant that inland Andhra was increasingly united with the early heartland of Telugu culture because of the coastal territory. Andhra, as we know it today, thus began to take shape in the period. As time passed and the Telugu language area gradually grew larger, we therefore find a considerable enlargement of the region considered to be Andhra, a striking correlation between linguistic practice and cultural theory. Once the identification of language with the region has been firmly articulated in the era of regional, kingdom, it continued to persist in subsequent centuries even after the loss of political unity.